Arizona over the weekend. The pair were behind the controls of an AH-1Z Viper aircraft at the time. Details are still unclear. The crash is under investigation. The helicopter was part of the Marine Corps Air Station, a 1,300 square mile training ground and one of the largest military installations in the world. Tom Graham, Fox News.
U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer wants Boeing removed from a Federal Aviation Administration rulemaking committee as investigators look at the role of the company and regulator related to two deadly airline crashes. Both crashes involved a Boeing jet green-lighted by U.S. regulator. This is Fox News.
Laddie Stone Entertainment and the stations of Choice Broadcasting proudly present the Miss and Mrs. Curry Guam Pageant on Wednesday, April 3rd at the Sheraton Laguna Guam Resort. Tickets are $25 in advance and $35 at the door. VIP tickets are $50 in advance and $65 at the door. Tickets available at the Hive, Misa Zone, the Vault, and from any of the lovely curvy contestants. Doors open at 6 p.m. and the show starts at 7. Hosted by yours truly, Ryan the Mixologist, and the beautiful Liza Camacho. Special thanks to Pitbull Empire, Local Promos, Figure 8, One Punch Media, and the International Sports Center.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant.
Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
Grammy-nominated and widely respected West Coast rapper Nipsey Hussle was killed outside his Los Angeles clothing store, Marathon Clothing. Police say 3 men were shot Sunday. The other 2 are listed in critical condition. Hussle was 33 and leaves behind 3 children and a girlfriend. Some never-before-seen Holocaust artifacts soon will be on view in New York.
The exhibit, titled Auschwitz, Not Long Ago, Not Far Away, opens at Manhattan's Museum of Jewish Heritage on May 8th. That's the day in 1945 when Germany surrendered in World War II and the Nazi death camps were liberated. The exhibit includes a vintage German train car similar to those used to transport men, women, and children to concentration camps. Up to 80 people were squeezed into a car at a time with no facilities, just a pail to urinate in.
Fox's Tom Rigotti. The exhibit will run through January 3rd. Another museum is opening dedicated to Ernest Hemingway.
American author Ernest Hemingway called the island of Cuba home throughout the 1940s and 50s. He died in 1961, leaving behind thousands of letters, photos, and books. Despite the current uneven level in Cuban-American relations, the two nations have banded together in Hemingway's honor. Between U.S. donors and Cuban builders, a $1.2 million state-of-the-art conservation center is now open on the grounds of the Ernest Hemingway Museum in Havana. It stands on the grounds of what was once the author's home overlooking the harbor there. The museum's director at Saturday's opening said that the creation of the center will contribute to safeguarding the legacy of Ernest Hemingway in Cuba. Karen McHugh, Fox News.
Junior guard Cassius Winston helps Michigan State upset Duke and secure their first Final Four appearance since 2015. Westwood One Radio with the call.
Winston dribbling around with 1 second, and that's it. Winston avoids the foul, and Winston sends Michigan State soaring to the Final Four.
Final score, Michigan 68, Duke 67. I'm Ann Carrick. This is Fox News.
Experience the Take Care difference. Take Care members can count on accessing a high-quality, credentialed network of on-island providers, including the convenient one-stop FHP Health Center and Urgent Care, access to an extensive off-island network of providers, and the island's largest offering of free fitness classes and health education programs. You can count on Take Care to deliver comprehensive, accredited insurance coverage and quality health care when and where you need it. Take Care. Our island, your health plan. Learn more at takecareasia.com.
Land-friendly burgers at Chili's. Indulge in a selection of our famous burgers with a black bean patty. Black bean patties combine beans with onions, parsley, bell peppers, and cilantro. Served with dill pickles and fries. More Latin entrees include the spicy shrimp tacos, Cajun pasta with shrimp, or grilled ancho salmon. Best of all, each entree is just $15 and comes with a refreshing Coca-Cola, iced tea, or Heineken on draft. Our fresh house salad with an entree for just $15. Chili's 3 for Meal-Let menu. Available for a limited time. Chili's. More life happens here.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of our free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's how we start the program every day. I oftentimes have some interesting commentary to make about the Second Amendment, who likes it, who doesn't, who's trying to take it away. And once again, I think my analysis turned out to be 100% correct, Real Joe Cruz. Have you ever seen that?
You don't say.
Have you ever seen that happen before?
On many occasions, sir.
Yeah. Well, you remember when the case came out of the Connecticut Supreme Court holding that the suit against Remington could go forward for one of those school massacres. And I said, this is not just about the Second Amendment. This is also about the First Amendment. Well, sure enough, I've got an article here out of Bearing Arms, which is a pretty good place to look for Second Amendment news. And something else along the same lines, I oftentimes mention that I am a fan of the Second Amendment, although I'm not a fan of Mr. Justice Antonin Scalia, who told us that when you read the Second Amendment, you should have a marking pen handy and make sure you mark out the word militia because it doesn't mean anything. But I am a fan of the Second Amendment, as I am a fan of all of the rights that our Constitution delineates. And I've mentioned on more than one occasion that starting with the Second Amendment is a pretty good way for me to tip my hat that I am a constitutionalist. So as per that particular approach to things, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, they're all very, very important. But here's what this article in Bearing Arms says. The title is, "The Second Amendment Isn't the Only Anti-Gun Target." Anti-gunners aren't exactly fans of the Constitution. I know, we already know that. It's clear in the political positions they hold outside of the issue of guns. However, they're also willing to use their anti-gun sensibilities to attack other parts of the Constitution. In particular, they're not fans of the First Amendment either. And here's a quote. "But it's military imagery and advertising, a surefire selling point when it comes to high-powered weaponry that has cropped up as a new trouble spot for the weapons industry. The Connecticut Supreme Court cracked open the door earlier this month in a ruling that allows victims of the 2012 mass shooting at Newton, Connecticut Elementary School to sue the maker of the rifle used in its attack over its advertising. Among the suit's claims is that Bushmaster, which is a proper noun, and other gun maker defendants, quote, promote their AR-15s by advertising that the most elite branches of the military, including Special Forces, SEALs, Green Berets, and Army Rangers, have used them. The problem, the plaintiff's lawyers say, is that young men can be obsessed with the military or succumb to image of masculinity that ad promises, that the ads promise if they buy the semi-auto rifles. "Consider your man card issued," read one of the Bushmaster ads for an AR-15 style gun, the one used in the Sandy Hook shooting. The ad speaks to a, quote, macho hyper-masculinity. Well, we know that that's just really bad, and no matter what the concept is, that the last thing that anyone who calls himself a man, no, I got to rephrase that, not calls himself a man, the last thing a person who is a man, because there is a difference, the last thing that a person who is a man should ever possess is a degree of masculinity. The ad speaks to a macho masculinity, said one of the attorneys for Katie Mesner Hage. Another Bushmaster ad reads, quote, "Force of opposition, bow down. You are single-handedly outnumbered." The advertising isn't misleading. It's actually extremely accurate, Katie said. It's a military weapon. It's insightful, reckless advertising. The AR-15 is meant to serve one purpose, which is to inflict as many casualties in combat as possible, Mesner-Haig said. But gun industry defenders point out that nowhere do the ads for such guns as AR-15 style rifles, versions of which are made by several makers besides Bushmaster, have ever implied that they can be used for purposes other than target practice, hunting, or shooting small game like feral pigs. At the end of the day, they're trying to, back to the editorial, at the end of the day, they're trying to prosecute the gun industry over advertising. That's an attack on freedom of speech. The courts have ruled time and again that companies are collective individuals who retain their rights to free speech. As such, they're free to make any comments they wish without fear of prosecution. This is a central tenet of this great, they said central tenant of this great, yeah, it's a good editorial, bad mark there. What they didn't mean to say central tenant, they meant central tenet, somewhat of a difference. Now, if you say something that directly results in injury, the much favored, quote, "You can't yell fire in a crowded theater," for example, you're still liable for that, but no one is accusing anyone of doing any such things. They're lashing out because the companies are marketing to men. Whoa. I don't think you can do that. Marketing to men. They're marketing to the demographic historically shown to be their actual market. And then the next sentence says, and they want to punish them for it. I don't know who the they is. I guess it's this lady who brought the suit, Kate Mesner-Hage. There's absolutely no evidence that the Sandy Hook killer was influenced by the advertising, even if he was. This advertising doesn't advocate shooting small children. It doesn't suggest such a thing. Further, they've successfully stigmatized guns to such a degree that you typically only find gun advertisements in a handful of places, namely firearm and outdoor magazines and websites. You just don't stumble upon a gun ad in your regular day-to-day life outside of the gun and outdoor communities. That makes the argument that a killer was influenced to murder by advertising even more ridiculous. It's not about guns. It's about control. It's clear that it's not just about what we can and can't own, but even how these companies should be allowed to market their products. Frankly, everyone should be on board with killing an argument like this. And I agree. Going back to the Frenchman Voltaire, although I disagree vehemently with what you say, I shall defend to the death your right to say it. That's what the First Amendment's all about. Not, not all of this leftist bans on triggering and, attacking a company for advertising its product. So that's the Second Amendment for today. And from there, where do we go next, Mr. Real Joe Cruz?
Zemi Kutney, sir.
Let's go to Zemi. And here we are, Zemi Kutney, my backwards multilingual play on words, accompanied by the theme music so adequately cued by the Real Joe Cruz. This portion of the program is our version of Meet the Press. We take a look at the editorials for the two daily newspapers and see if we can wring some edgy, provocative, timely, up-to-date, readable content out of at least one of them. And if we do, we give that editorial the coveted Blue Star Award. It's not going to go to the Daily News again today. It's not going to go to the Daily News. Here's the Daily News. Obamacare in danger. Ever since the 2010 passage of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, Republicans have been hell-bent on either repealing the measure in Congress or striking it down in courts. The latest effort to overturn the decade-old law, which the Trump administration joined this week with a legal brief calling for the entire Obamacare's demise, combines the two approaches. It reasons that Congress can repeal a tiny portion of the law, which it did by ending penalties for those without insurance. Sympathetic judges would then repeal the rest, which has happened at the district court level in Texas. Call it what it is, a tag team assault on the ACA and on the Obamacare by Congress, conservatives in Congress and in robes. At risk are popular provisions that guarantee coverage for people with pre-existing conditions, allow children to remain on parents' policies until 26, expand Medicaid eligibility for low-income adults, and create insurance marketplaces for workers who aren't employed by government or medium to large companies. And the editorial then says the Obamacare has flaws. Progressive Democrats' Medicare for All proposals are too expensive. With no credible alternatives, the options are approving Obamacare or returning to an untenable situation before it existed. While President Donald Trump prattled Wednesday about some forthcoming unspecified offering that would be far better than Obamacare and make the GOP the party of great health care, he has no such plan. Such a plan has never existed for one simple reason. Obamacare is largely that plan. Its basic architecture was devised in the 1990s as a conservative alternative to proposals of Bill and Hillary Clinton. Later, it would be put into practice by Republican Mitt Romney when he was governor of Massachusetts, and appropriated by Democrat Barack Obama when he was a presidential candidate. Ironically and cynically, the biggest winner from renewed effort to kill Obamacare is Democrat lawmakers. With Trump off the hook on Russian collusion, they could hardly restrain their glee this week as they attack the president and unveil plans to expand coverage. USA Today. In other words, this is another editorial that our editors here at the local Gannett paper ran instead of doing a home-cooked editorial, which pretty much takes them out of the race for the coveted Blue Star. But just some clarifications here. What happened was that a judge in Texas, a district court judge in Texas, ruled. Well, let me back up a second. The Congress repealed the tax in Obamacare, the tax that says if you don't have some kind of a health insurance, you have to pay a tax. And that is basically the foundation of Obamacare. Because insurance, if you understand it, is a means of pooling a risk. So with Obamacare, you take people who have all different kinds of risk profiles and you put them into a same plan. And the idea is that the healthy ones actually have to pay for the sick ones because everybody pays a premium, and the healthy people don't use much health care. The sick people use a lot. So if your insurance plan is set up right, it all comes out even. That is the basic theory of all different kinds of insurance. It's why it's called risk management. You spread the risk. Instead of allowing every risk to lie where it falls, you spread the risk amongst a larger pool of people that you call the insured. So if a national health insurance program proceeded on that basis, young people are going to say, I don't need insurance. I'm healthy. Why do I want to pay a premium for health insurance? And the thinking ones are going to say, when really what I'm doing is just paying for health care for a bunch of old folks. So in order to combat that, the Obamacare legislation had the provision that if you didn't have health care, you had to pay a tax. In other words, to coerce young people into buying health care policies. Well, the Congress repealed that tax provision. And this was really important because if you go back to when Obamacare came before the Supreme Court ruled that the Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution was not a sufficient jurisdictional base to support Obamacare. But, and this is a John Roberts invention, since the tax provision is in Obamacare, it is a tax law. And there are very, very few to no restrictions on Congress's ability to tax people. So because it was a tax, the Supreme Court let it stand. But the judge in Texas said when that tax was repealed, it's kind of like pulling the cork. It's like pulling the stopper out of a bottle. Everything else drains out too, and the whole law is then unconstitutional. Well, the judge himself stayed his ruling until the appeals courts deal with it. So when the matter went to, I think, the Fifth Circuit, the Solicitor General of the United States filed an amicus brief saying the judge in Texas was right. The whole thing is unconstitutional. So putting the politics aside, I think that's the right ruling. In my legal estimation, having followed this thing from the beginning, and policy-wise, it's the right thing to do. There's no reason for the national government of the United States to get into the insurance business. If the national government weren't in that business, and if all of the intricacies of insurance law that make it very difficult for insurance companies to do business interstate, I think market forces would provide us with as good a health insurance program as is possible. Now, of course, you have to stop for a moment and define what do you mean by health insurance. And insurance, usually with insurance, you're insuring against a catastrophic risk. For instance, if you have car insurance, you don't buy insurance that will reimburse you for the cost of changing your oil. Your car insurance, if you were in a serious accident, in addition to the liability portion of your insurance policy, would also reimburse you for the cost of repairing your car. But if all you had was a flat tire, your collision insurance ain't going to cover you. Well, that's our idea now with health insurance, that health insurance should cover everything. So that no matter if you have a hangnail and have to go to a doctor, your insurance should cover it. There'd be no out-of-pocket costs. So first of all, I say, good, let's get rid of Obamacare. It's not a good policy. Second, let's get the government out of the insurance business, and that's the only way we're going to have a real policy. Third, or maybe first, come on, Daily News. If we want to read Gannett editorials, we'll just go to USA Today or go online or something like that. We look forward to editorials that have a local dimension. And I can't help but wondering, I think it was last Friday that I speculated, is there a strike going on down there at the Daily News? Are people in the editorial boardroom on strike because they seem to be running other people's editorials more than they run their own. Okay, well, Jim, I hope you're listening, but this editorial is not in the running for the coveted Blue Star. Jim called last week and said, Jim thinks that sometimes maybe I reach a little bit too much to find a Blue Star when neither of the editorials is worthy. And I had to agree with Jim, and I told him I would tighten up a little bit on that. Okay, then we come to the Post. You can't accuse the Post of being mealy-mouthed or can't we all just get along, or I don't want to be too controversial. That's not the Post's approach to editorial writing here, at least on some of the issues. And here's today's Post. More families could be displaced, but pot promoters won't hear any of it. Pot promoters. And the lead-in, should the governor sign the recreational marijuana legislation into law regardless of the potential burdens on our community? Despite false claims by certain promoters of recreational marijuana that the issue has been before the legislature for, quote, years, and even if the 8 senators who voted for this legislation have such a low regard for the voters, they think this falsehood will be believed, Governor Lou Leon Guerrero does have a lot to think about. The fact is that freshman Senator Clinton Rogel's recreational marijuana legislation has been before the legislature for less than 2 months. And as the legislature rushed the legislation through, more changes were done to it, and in-depth discussions on its potential impact on our community were scant or non-existent. To claim that other similar ideas have gone through the legislature in past years and that the previous discussions on other pieces of legislation can count towards the process for this one insults the capacity of our residents to see through the smoke and mirrors. I wonder what kind of smoke they mean. There's still a chance, given the governor's astute understanding of what it takes to raise a family, that she will be the matriarch in the room that puts the brakes on this hastily passed legislation. Having said that, there's also a good chance that the pro-recreational marijuana promoters, some of whom have close access to the governor because they helped her get elected, will carry influence that she would sign the legislation into law. There are at least 2 grave matters the governor must consider as she thinks this through. 1, recreational marijuana's impact on the workplace. 2, the possibility that families who rely on federal public housing assistance can get kicked out if just one member of the family uses pot. Let's say Guam's first mom governor also goes down in history as the signatory for the recreational marijuana legislation to become law. Those who have been waiting to smoke pot legally still have to go to work. And if they show up stoned in the workplace, not a lot of employers will tolerate that. You think that's right, Real Joe Cruz?
It's very possible, sir.
Yeah. It just doesn't seem fair, does it, if it's legal?
I guess it depends on the policy of the workplace, sir.
If they show up stoned, they lose their jobs, their family becomes a burden on everybody. More kids from these households will show up in public classrooms unfed and uncared for and not ready to learn. Our public school teachers already see this happening in the schools among students from meth-devastated families. A Guam Education Board, who's also an associate professor of public administration at the University of Guam, has asked the Education Board and its members to take a stance. but they've chosen not to. Why would they want to get involved in anything that has to do with school kids? I can understand that. Our voice matters. The parents matters. The teachers matter, and our students matter, Ron McNinch said. The other point we hope the governor would consider is the federal law. Under Section 577 of the Quality Housing and Work Responsibility Act, which has zero tolerance for marijuana use when it comes to federal government-paid housing assistance, including the Section 8 rent program, the law doesn't care if the reason for marijuana use is medicinal or recreational. For Section 8 housing program, under which many families have been able to get roofs over their heads, landlords can choose to deny their applications according to federal law and use housing and urban renewal and U.S. housing and urban renewal regulations. I'm going to come back to this after that short break.
Help celebrate Earth Month with 93.3 The Point and the return of the Upcycle Mascot Showdown. Stay tuned for details on the upcoming live event and how you can support your favorite school. The Upcycle Mascot Showdown, brought to you by Lolita Kamet from Remax Diamond Realty, the Agana Shopping Center, Sylvan Learning Center, PBS Guam, and 93.3 The Point.
Shrimp and guacamole for Lent at Subway. The all-new shrimp and guacamole combines generous portions of whole shrimp and a spread of guacamole served on freshly baked bread, paired with vegetables cut fresh daily in restaurants and sauces that are sure to excite your taste buds. Hurry in, it's only available for a limited time. Other fresh Lenten flavors include the classic tuna or the mouth-watering greatness of our seafood sensation. Don't forget the Veggie Max, a delicious and tasty vegetarian patty. Visit any of our convenient locations today. At Subway, you make it what you want.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So for Section 8 housing for the Section 8 housing program, under which many Guam families have been able to get roofs over their heads, landlords can choose to deny their housing applications according to federal law and U.S. housing and urban development regulations, or if they're already tenants under Section 8 or other housing programs funded by HUD, a landlord can cancel their lease, the HUD regulations state. According to HUD, in a December 2014 memo, since the 1990s, a number of states have legalized the use of marijuana specifically for medicinal purposes. More recently, some states have begun broadly legalizing its use for recreational purposes. Regardless of the purposes for which legalized under state law, the use of marijuana in any form is illegal under the Controlled Substances Act and is therefore illegal under Section 577 of the Quality Housing and Work Responsibility Act. These are just two of the issues that should have been discussed before senators voted. However, the point of the recent legislative public input process on recreational marijuana was never about talking about the ramifications of the proposed law. The point was to rush things through, lest the public raise more questions. Should the governor sign the recreational marijuana legislation into law, regardless of the potential burdens on our community? We have 9 more days left to find out. So the Post pulls no punches. I also have something that I dug out of the Daily News by a guy named Robert Zimmerman, who's billed as a guest columnist. It's a good thing that the Post runs some original work. And Robert has an interesting viewpoint. While politicians across the country seem to be giving people what many want with the decriminalization of marijuana, the statistics are revealing an increase in DUI traffic accidents. My wife and I founded both the Oasis and Lighthouse, those are 2 different nonprofits, to help the addicted regain a life of sobriety and greater freedom. We've personally worked with a lot of people over the years who have been referred for drug treatment due to testing positive for THC. I personally don't want to see any more people locked up or criminalized for their choice to smoke. Politicians can argue over how to best regulate the industry and taxes they collect. Advertisers and advocates try to cover their liability exposure by telling their customers to smoke pot like we are told to drink responsibility. To smoke pot like we are told to drink responsibly. But that reminder falls short. The reality is marijuana and alcohol are sedatives. These drugs hinder one's ability for reasonable decision-making or sound judgment and definitely slow reaction time. The cost of treating more sick and diseased people who become drug dependent is staggering. Many lives are tragically impacted as a result of a DWI accident or work-related injury due to THC or another drug. If politicians want to address the problem, they need to look at the long-range impact of marijuana legislation. It's more to the, but I think this is interesting coming from two people that ran these nonprofits, Oasis and Lighthouse. And this guy kind of picks up part of my own approach to this whole thing, which, if you've forgotten it, I'll go through it again. It's pretty short. If I had the ability to do so, I would take marijuana off Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act so that proper research can be done. And if research shows that marijuana or the cannabinol or whatever have medicinal properties, fine. We know how to deal with that. We've got a Federal Drug Administration. We've been doing prescription drugs for a long, long time. We do it fairly well, right? So that would be the way we would deal with medicinal marijuana. Second, as far as the regulation of marijuana is concerned, other than the medicinal properties, which I just mentioned, I think that should be a matter of state law. The national government could regulate interstate shipments of marijuana within the confines of the Commerce Clause, but there's nothing in the Constitution of the United States that said federal bureaucrats can regulate drugs. That's just something that was made up, and it's a product of the Supreme Court's interpretation, very loose interpretation of the Commerce Clause, which I've commented on before, and cited to an old case called Wickard versus Filburn. So it should be a matter, it shouldn't be Schedule 1, it should be a matter of state law. And then finally, my viewpoint on it is this. I don't know how society benefits by having another mind-altering drug legal in circulation, or as Robert Zimmerman says, the reality is marijuana and alcohol are sedatives. These drugs hinder one's ability for reasonable decision-making or sound judgment and definitely slow reaction time. Well, that being the case, do we really need another drug generally available to the public that fits into that circumstance? I don't see how the public benefits by that. I've listened a lot. I haven't heard anything that's very convincing that tells me that the public benefits by having a legal sedative, or at least a quasi-legal sedative, available to the general public. You can try again. You can give it a try if you want, but so far that's going to be the tall tale's position on the legalization of both marijuana and cannabis. Okay, so that's Emmy Cotney, and not even very close today. It's obvious that the Post is going to get the coveted blue star today, and there it is. Okay, so by way of explanation, it's not necessary that the editorial agree with the correct position, which means my position, the tall tales position. It helps. It helps if an editorial doesn't, it's got a little bit heavier burden. But the editorial must say something that people need to think about or hear. It's got to be edgy. It can be it has to be no pulling punches. It has to be topical, and it has to be relevant, and it's got to be home-baked, home-cooked, which lets the Daily News out most of the time, since they seem to have such a penchant for running editorials from USA Today. So today's editorial in the Post filled the bill. It was provocative, caused you to think. Part of that is if it makes people angry, that counts too. How dare the Post say that? Where do they get off saying that? Shouldn't they try to be fair and even-handed? Well, not when they're writing editorials. They don't have that responsibility. Okay, so from there we go to the card and see what I've got on the card today. I've got more Menogate, more of the antics of Rory Respicio, the executive manager of the port. I've got the left versus Ram Emanuel, and once again my crystal ball worked 100%. And then I've got Jack versus Mike Bora. Now, when I say Jack, I don't mean the Jack. I mean Jack Haddock. And then I've got Melvin Bora versus United States of America. I've got GPD versus Mark Chotfris, which has been on the card for quite a while, but I haven't gotten to it yet, but it's important and bears discussion. And then I've still got Mueller versus Mueller. Okay, so let's talk about, I couldn't figure out how to caption this one, but if you saw the front page of the Daily News, as you were the front page of the Sunday News, there was quite a picture, a nice colored picture. And the caption of the picture reads like this: "Session ends with hugs." Senators Talina Nelson, Amanda Shelton, Therese Terlahi, and Mary Torres embrace each other with hugs after the legislature's March regular session adjourned Friday, after more than a week of floor debate on contentious bills, including the recreational marijuana legislation and a bill that would pave the way for limited games of chance at the 75th Liberation Day. Did you see that picture, real Joe Cruz?
What, where they were hugging, sir?
Yeah.
No, I didn't see it. Man, I missed out.
Yeah, I think you could probably go and find, you go down to the library, I think they've got editions of it. I'll just show you through the
Yeah. Oh, man, I wish you didn't show me that. Yeah. I'm getting all fuzzy.
It's pretty touching, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so there are 4 women here hugging one another. Was that all of the women in?
No, I think there's 10 of them.
10 women in the legislature.
Yeah. But I think some of the women differ on views, so maybe they didn't all want to hug each other.
I see. Well, I'm sure there's an interesting story here, but I just have to let it go, I guess, until maybe one of our callers can call in and shed some light on the group hug at the legislature. Okay, so we go next to Menogate, also known as Rory Respicio versus various and sundry people. So there was an article on KUAM and another one in, the Post. And KUAM starts out with a bang. At the port board meeting, the port board had a meeting on Thursday. Port cargo checker clerk Angela Yoshida burst into tears. Wow. Burst into tears while reading the petition before Rory Respicio. as you were before, Rory Respicio, Port General Manager, GMs Dominic Munya and Connie Shinahara, Port members, and Port Legal Counsel Mike Phillips. So she burst into tears. And the first sentence of the article says, Port of Authority of Guam employees have signed a petition showing support for Port General Manager Rory Respicio. So Connie Yoshida read the petition and then, Connie Jo Shinahara. I'm sorry, one more time. Angela Yoshida read the petition and burst into tears. Where did I put that picture? Yeah, this one here. Yeah. Okay, so she burst into tears when she read this petition. And she goes on to say, we were once a port family. We respectfully ask the board to continue to support the management team like we do today and allow them to work towards the goals that have been set out by the new administration for them to achieve. Thank you for this opportunity to allow us to express our support for the new management team. The petition says port employees endured a hostile work environment under former Port GM Joanne Brown. The petition says under Brown's leadership, port supervisors and managers would use yelling, intimidating, and bullying because they lost their sight in motivating employees. Brown responded by telling KUAM News the petition is another sign the port has become a circus, in quotes, under Respicio's leadership. I think that's just a move to try to make it appear the unethical actions of Rory Respicio are acceptable, she said. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the names on that petition have had probably adverse issues against them for not doing their jobs. When I came to the port, there were a lot of different agendas. If they want to now come and say, hey, we didn't have a voice, that's fine. But those who worked hard and did their jobs didn't have a problem. I'm not surprised that this type of thing would come out to try and make Rory's actions seem acceptable. Unfortunately, this is a circus. They're just trying to play ball with Rory. Rory's end game is to reinstate the Port 7 and get them back pay. Suspicions confirmed. As Mary Torres said, follow the money. Rory only knows politics. As far as the daily running of the operations of the port, I'm afraid for the port. Angela Yoshida confirmed her husband was fired from the port. A very objective person. Angela Yoshida confirmed her husband was fired from the port and he is currently seeking reinstatement by appealing his termination with the Civil Service Commission. 75 of the port's nearly 400 employees signed the petition supporting Respicio. The petition asks the Port Board to continue to support this management team. So, once again, Rory has been in the thick of the termination of employees going all the way back to when he was a senator and sent a letter to the Attorney General at the time, Lenny Rapadas, accusing an Assistant Attorney General named Werner of prosecutorial misconduct because Werner was doing an investigation to prosecute some people at the port. Rory said this was prosecutorial misconduct. I don't know what Rory's connection or why Rory was interested. Of course, I should know. I guess senators are supposed to be able to get involved with whatever they want. So then, what's the name of that? Is that the Ventures?
I believe so, sir.
That's great music, Joe Cruz. Congratulations. Okay, we'll come back for 10 more minutes, and then we'll break for the big halftime show.
Hey,
Are you ready to afford the good life? For example, cooking in a gourmet kitchen that is as amazing as your skills. Or how about paying off tuition? Or maybe expanding your home to make room for your parents. Live beyond your dreams, within your means, with a low-rate home equity line of credit from First Hawaiian Bank. To learn more or to apply, visit any branch or FHB.com. First Hawaiian Bank. It all starts with yes. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Ruby Tuesday's Seafood Sensations menu is back. Choose from your favorite dishes made with succulent lobster tail, shrimp, or our newest sensations with crab legs. Try out appetizers like crab fondue or stuffed shrimp. Pick an entree like the lobster tail or crab leg dinner. Select the lobster carbonara or the deep sea pasta. It's all ready and waiting for you. Get hooked on Seafood Sensations for a limited time only at Ruby Tuesday Guam.
So then the matter of Bernadette Mano came up, and the question of whether or not of her slip and fall, some expenses, a $70,000 bill, a lot of conflict came up, and the port went through the process of firing Mano, and after she was fired, very shortly after she was fired, guess where she found a job? At the office of Rory Respicio. So the next event the next time Rory got involved was the first meeting that he had with his board of directors, who are, at least in theory, his boss, although I think I'd probably have to check with Angela Yoshida on that. Rory said that he had appointed the deputy of the director of the port, Connie Shinohara, to set up a task force to examine the adverse actions taken against the Port 7 and other adverse actions, possibly Mr. Yoshida. And he also said that he wanted to get rid of Mike Phillips. He wanted to get in-house counsel, retain, and get rid of Mike Phillips. And that didn't set exactly too well with his board. It set better with his board, though, than the revelation that Rory had on his own taken steps to start negotiating with the YTK company, Champ Calvo, about some sort of a settlement of the YTK controversy. This did not sit well with the board either. So then I've got an article here that appeared in today's Post. Oh, yeah, and the next thing is that case before the Civil Service Commission, Daniel Del Priore, who represented one of the port employees who had been fired, told the executive director of the commission that there was a possibility of settlement of that case. And this was the second time this had happened. Kurt Vandeveld, who represented two of the Port 7, also said the same thing. And each time, the lawyer, counsel for the port, an attorney named Heaton, said, we don't know anything at all about the board wanting to settle. So we also had the situation where Governor Leon Guerrero was asked about the Port 7, and she said, well, you know, it's going through the courts and the Civil Service Commission. We'll just let the process take its course. But Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio said, well, it's about fairness, and I know they've got some kind of a committee down there at the port to do the right thing, and I hope it comes out right. I'm paraphrasing. So I guess I'm not too surprised by the article that KOAM ran about Ms. Yoshida and her support for Rory. Okay, then at the Post coverage points out, oh, one other thing. Del Priore said that, yeah, we're talking settlement here, but we haven't gotten very far. We're waiting for the complexion of the board to change. Now, in this era of Jussie Smollett and the governor of Virginia, et cetera, and all this talk about blackface, I don't know exactly what to make about Del Priority's remark, but nevertheless, there are 2 new board members. The port welcomed during Friday's port board meeting 2 new members, Anthony Chargaloff Jr. and Issa Marie Koki. So the article doesn't say anything about their complexions. I guess that would be up to Dan Del Priore to tell us about that. And the same article talks about creating the position of in-house counsel for the port because Phillips' contract expires in June. And then this same article mentions the Yoshida petition being read out loud. It didn't tell us, though, that Yoshida broke into tears. I guess that's the advantage of seeing these things on TV, right? You get a little bit more of the human angle, although the Daily News did a really nice job here with the picture on the front page of the Sunday News. This one here, yeah. So here's what the Daily News, what the Post said about the petition. Also, let's see. Since Mr. Respicio has been appointed on January 8, he has shown nothing but deep concern for the voices we lost 6 years ago, said Yoshida. We respectfully ask the board to support this management team. It's an interesting idea. Also Friday, Respicio said he was, quote, humbled by the presentation, close quote. He was humbled. So touching. Respicio acknowledged that when he was first appointed port manager, some of the actions caused a hiccup, referring to his efforts to seek mediation over the $17 million arbitration award to Guam YTK. And then he said, I never meant any disrespect. I never meant anything other than to see what kind of mitigation opportunities were out there. Well, that isn't what happened, Rory. That's not what you did. And then he acknowledged those powers are reserved for the board. So I'm going to keep an eye on this because unless I'm really wrong, really off base on this, does that ever happen, Real Joe Cruz?
It's very rare, sir.
But it has happened?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
I can't confirm or deny, sir.
Good answer, Real Joe Cruz. Let's break for that halftime show that the fans love so much.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A candlelight vigil for a slain student. I'm Ann Carrick, Fox News. They gathered at the University of South Carolina remembering Samantha Josephson, murdered after mistaking a car for her Uber ride in the early hours of Friday morning. One friend telling a story of their time together in Spain.
Running around our teeny tiny Spanish apartments, blaring Hannah Montana, while she was showing me the personal Instagram DMs that she sent to Lil Wayne to adopt her and marry her mother and become her stepdad. I want you to know she wished him Merry Christmas every year.
Nathaniel Rowland, the driver of the car, is under arrest, charged with murder. Josephson's father suggested students travel together to avoid such tragedies in the future. In Boston, an Uber driver is under arrest, charged with 2 counts of rape. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement placed a detainer on that Boston Uber driver. Civil rights activist Jesse Jackson is holding a Chicago rally in support of the Cook County state's attorney.
Jackson says it's wrong that Kim Foxx has come under fire for dropping all felony charges against embattled Empire actor Jussie Smollett in the racist hoax attack case. Fox did so in exchange for Smollett forfeiting the $10,000 bond he posted and community service that happened to be at the Rainbow Push Coalition, Jackson's organization. Chicago's Fraternal Order of Police planned to protest outside Fox's office Monday over the dismissal of the charges. Jackson calls the criticism of Fox unreasonable, unjustified, and politically motivated. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
Rapper Nipsey Hussle is dead. Police say he was shot and killed outside his own clothing store in Los Angeles, Marathon Clothing. He was 33. 2 other men were shot and listed in critical condition. Sources say it could be gang-related. This is Fox News.
Are you shopping for a home loan with a low rate and a fast closing? Because that's what you get with a Bank Pacific My Home Loan. All of our loan decisions are made here by people who understand our island. So whether you're buying or building a home or looking to refinance your existing home loan to a lower rate, come see us at Bank Pacific, where we're open to closing your loan in a hurry.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply. Viva Bank Pacific.
The GCC Votech Class of 79 is back. Join them on April 27th at the Onward Beach Hotel for a night of dinner, dancing, skits, and reminiscing. It's been 40 years since graduation, so take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime chance to relive the memories. There's also a memorial mass on Friday, the 26th, at the Santa Teresita Church. Be there at 5:30 for candle placement in honor of classmates who've gone before. Tickets for the reunion on the 27th are on sale for $40 a person. For details, find Connie Kittigwas and Nicholas at 488-6108 or Kathy Diaz, 777-3243. Viva 79ers!
A new kind of plastic bag ban is scheduled to take effect today in Salem, Oregon.
In a place like Los Angeles, for example, you can still get plastic bags for your groceries, but they're the thicker kind, not those flimsy, easily torn ones. Well, in Salem, Oregon, they have a ban going into effect today that says no plastic bags at all at large retailers. Bring your own reusable ones or get a paper bag. The ban impacts stores larger than 10,000 square feet until September, when smaller stores will have to comply as well. There will be exceptions, like putting prepared foods in plastic. More than a dozen other cities in Oregon have already approved similar rules, and lawmakers are considering plastic bag and straw bans for the entire state. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Could be time for a change. European lawmakers are voting to abolish changing the continent's clocks.
Just like the US, the European Union's 28 member states all move their clocks forward by an hour in the spring and then back again in the autumn, but perhaps not for long. The European Parliament voting to scrap the changes beginning in 2021. A Parliament report saying the practice no longer brings any energy savings and that abolishing it may even bring health benefits. An opinion survey found strong public support. Member countries will now be consulted. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
In Venezuela, a new 30-day plan to ration electricity. President Maduro making the announcement Sunday as nationwide power outages continue, also cutting off the water supply and communications, sometimes for days at a time. He's blaming a U.S.-led sabotage for the power cuts, but presents no evidence. President Maduro also warning against any unrest in reaction to the blackouts. There were scattered protests following a call by opposition leader Juan Guaido, who says years of government neglect and corruption has left the electrical grid in shambles. I'm Ann Carrick, and this is Fox News.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo, 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Here at APL, our core values give the company its heart and soul. Whether it's connecting your business with our global network through our newly enhanced service or investing our efforts into giving back to the community, APL is committed to serving you. We humbly honor the opportunity to find innovative solutions for you and your business. To learn more about our enhanced service, call 588-4651 or visit www.apl.com/Guam for more details.
So there you have it. That big halftime show that we excite you with every day here at 1700, at 5 o'clock here on the Point. The marching band, the cheerleaders, the drill teams, the synchronized card sections up in the grandstand. So I'm just going to wrap up here on the latest episode of Menogate. But my thesis is this, that this entire Menogate, it's a proposition to try to put money in the pockets of the Port 7. And we're talking about millions of dollars here if there is a way to put those people back to work so that they get full back pay. Being basically a rule of law type person, my preference in these matters is to let the system work. We have a Civil Service Commission, we've got a Superior Court, we've got a Supreme Court. All of those employees have had access to those. The Civil Service Commission, the usual evaluation of the Civil Service Commission is that it is quite pro-employee and that management really has to have a good case in order to win at the Civil Service Commission. And we have a neutral, impartial Superior Court and a Supreme Court. So with these cases being lodged in our judicial or quasi-judicial system, it would seem to me that if we really value the rule of law, that would be the way to go. Rory's actions don't seem to be in accordance with that, because, as per what I mentioned earlier, way back at the time when Nelson Werner, an assistant attorney general, was doing an investigation, Rory jumped right into the middle of it, and he still seems to be in the middle of it. And he's gained at least one backer, Mrs. Yoshida, whose husband is currently before, one of those people who has been fired by the previous port management. So from afar, without having any inside information, this does not look like the way, as the old saying goes, this is a heck of a way to run a railroad, where the new administration has tipped its hand before it ever started, that there is this apparent desire to, quote, help the Port 7. So I'm going to keep watching this for you, and as the news breaks, I will bring it to your attention. Now we're going to turn to the national news for a moment, and we're going to talk for a moment about Jussie Smollett. And if you've been following this at all, Jussie Smollett is a TV actor on a program called, what's the program called?
I think it's called Empire, sir.
Yeah, Empire. I haven't watched it, but
it's about the music industry.
Yeah, my kind of. I like Law and Order.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or yeah. So anyhow, Jussie Smollett was an actor there, and the news came out that the first news came out that he was beaten up by a couple of guys wearing MAGA, Make America Great hats. They put a noose around his neck, and they beat him up. And the city of Chicago was mildly outraged. They did an investigation to find these culprits who had done this to just Jussie Smollett. They arrested a couple of people from Jamaica, and the two people from Jamaica said, no, that isn't what happened at all. Jussie Smollett hired us to fake this whole incident, and nobody beat him up. None of this stuff happened. He just hired us to fake us. He gave us $3,000 to fake it. Well, then there's some public outrage in Chicago about how this guy tricked everybody, tricked the cops, caused the expenditure of a lot of money, etc. And the chief of police in Chicago came out and was very critical of Jussie Smollett. And the mayor of Chicago, a certain Ram, it's R-A-H-M, I pronounce it Ram. If Mueller can call himself Mueller, I can call Ram. So Rahm Emanuel came out, and I read an article here the other day. Rahm Emanuel sounds off again on Smollett. And there's a lot of angst on the part of the mayor of Chicago and the chief of police of Chicago and just about everybody else that knew about the facts of this, about Smollett doing this. And the explanation was that Smollett, first of all, sent himself a hate letter, but he didn't get enough of a reaction out of that. So then he hired the two guys to stage this event. And his idea was to draw some attention to himself so that he could draw a higher salary as an actor on the TV show called Empire. So that didn't work out so well for him. So everybody's thinking, well, I guess Jussie Smollett is going to be prosecuted for, unsworn falsification, filing, all this kind of stuff. Well, the next thing that happens is that the district attorney for Cook County, Chicago's in Cook County, district attorney for Cook County, Kim Foxx, comes out and says, well, we're not going to prosecute Mr. Smollett. He's done community service. He's going to forfeit his bond. So we're not going to prosecute him, and we're going to seal all the records of this case right away. It's an awful lot of outrage. You could... I understand that in most neighborhoods in Chicago, you could roll your window down, and if you stuck your head outside, this is what you'd hear: people hollering, "The fix is in! The fix is in!" It sure looked like that, right? The fix is in. And then, of course, there's a lot of criticism of Kim Foxx, Smollett again, etc., and Rahm Emanuel won't let it go. Well, as this goes popping along, I said it's just a matter of time before the left is going to turn on Rahm Emanuel, because he's not following the rules of the left. Now, if anybody should know the rules of the left, it ought to be Rahm Emanuel, who was a congressman from Illinois, Democrat, was chief of staff for Barack Obama, very close to the Clintons. If anybody should know the rules, it's Rahm. So the rules are that you don't, that in postmodernism, you don't concentrate. Maybe you don't even pay any attention to the conduct of a person. What you have to look at is his background and his life experience, and then you make your judgments about that person, whether he has done something wrong or has not done something wrong. Well, as it turns out, Jussie Smollett is in almost the top of identity politics. Now, part of the postmodern method of looking at things is that people are grouped into various kinds of identities, and some identities are superior to others. So if a person can properly claim membership in an identity group, then society must give him a pass or certain privileges along the way. I give you Pocahontas, Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, who wanted people to recognize her as a Native American. It didn't work out very well for her. So Jussie Smollett is in the way up at the top of the identity politics grouping. First of all, he's an African American, and second, he is homosexual. He's an openly homosexual African American. So who is Rahm Emanuel to go around saying things about Jussie Smollett? There are more important things for him to do. So this writer over here on the left, a guy named David Masciotra, really unloads on Rahm Emanuel. And I think it's kind of comical, the approach that David takes in slamming Rahm. If you're looking for logical fallacies, try false equivalency and straw man. But here's what he said. The title of his column is "The Absurd Outrage Over Jussie Smollett." And it goes like this: there are few images more vomitous. What a word. That's not a word I use, not a word I ever intend to use. I'm not even going to repeat it as part of this story. Then Mayor Rahm Emanuel's giving a high-minded speech about justice while surrounded by the top brass of the Chicago Police Department. Emanuel is the same Machiavellian mayor whose administration concealed a videotape of Jason Van Dyke, then a Chicago police officer, murdering Laquan McDonald, a 17-year-old African-American, in cold blood. A jury of his peers convicted Van Dyke of second-degree murder, only to have a judge hand down the absurd sentence of 6 years and 9 months. The judge said that the courts must take into account Van Dyke's, quote, years of public service. After all, who can begrudge a distinguished officer an occasional homicide? It turns out, however, that Van Dyke was not so distinguished. 20 citizens' complaints against him, including one for use of racial slurs and excessive force, but none resulted in disciplinary action. The next paragraph talks about a Chicago judge acquitting 3 police officers facing credible charges of complicity in the Van Dyke shooting. The Chicago Police Department paying a $45 million in settlement fees for violations of civil rights in 2018. 2015, there was a rather damaging report in a newspaper called The Guardian. And then David goes on to say, racial profiling, police brutality, and omerta to protect abusive and violent officers is as characteristic of Chicago as cold winters. I'd probably say that's right. He probably hit that. He's probably right on that one. Under the mayoral tenure of Emanuel, the draconian assaults on black residents of the city worsened rather than mitigated, and for that reason, among many others, it challenges the heart to stomach to watch Emanuel do his best impersonation of Thomas Aquinas as he presents a treatise on justice for the cameras, all because disorderly conduct charges against television actor Jussie Smollett, accused of staging a hate crime to advance his career, were dismissed. Emanuel thunderously denounced the city prosecutors, calling the decision to release Smollett a, quote, whitewash of justice. Now, that's a pretty dangerous term, whitewash. I don't know if I want to use that one or not. For the sake of argument, even if one concedes that Smollett was guilty as Van Dyke, a comparison of the crime in question, the reaction they provoke others, offers a colorful illustration of whose lives have value in the United States. So, you know, he builds up all these straw men talking about how bad the police force is in Chicago. Okay, well, I think that he probably makes a pretty good case there. He goes on to say, filing a false police report claiming victimhood when none exists and exploiting the racial divisions of American culture would amount to an immoral and insidious waste of taxpayer money and police resources. Even still, it causes no one's death, dismemberment, etc. So, in other words, he's saying that Smollett should be forgiven because he's not as bad as some of the other things that go on in Chicago. That's a pretty nice standard. And then, of course, the obligatory reference to Donald Trump. Emanuel, not exactly Donald Trump, but a Democrat with experience in the Clinton and Obama administrations, transcends his own persona to become the personification of white indifference to black oppression in America. So, once again, I called this one right. that Rahm Emanuel, when he came out and said this turned out to be a whitewash of Jussie Smollett, is now taking heat, taking fire from the left. I had another article. I don't remember if I went into this or not, but the attorney Tina Glandian, who is Smollett's attorney, alleges that the Jamaicans, that it actually had happened. What Smollett said happened really did happen, and it may very well be that the two people that allegedly beat up Smollett, who were African Americans, were wearing whiteface at the time. Yeah.
Is there such a thing?
Oh, I hadn't heard of it before, but then Tina goes on to say, well, if you go online, you can find a Saturday Night Live skit where these two guys appeared in whiteface.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's the opposite of blackface.
Yeah. So that kind of led me into an editorial piece in the Post by a university professor named, let's see, what's his name here? James Selman, yeah. And James chimes in here on the whole color thing, white face and whatever. I think it's an interesting article. And he says, the tagline here, let's stop promoting the haters, nationalists, and racists. Let's stop empowering them by accepting their self-ascribed label of, quote, white. When the media accepts their self-ascribed label, it lends an air of credibility to their position. And then he criticizes the Post that ran his own piece. On March 23, the Post published 2 articles using the word, quote, white in the title to describe Caucasian folk. Let's stop promoting the use of the word white to describe racists or nationalists who mistakenly believe they have some superiority over others. There's only one human race. The attempt to divide up Homo sapiens species into races is wrong, misguided, and basically the root of racism itself. Caucasians, people who mistakenly call themselves white, cannot pass the tissue test. If you put a truly white facial tissue besides their skin complexion, then it is evident they are beige, not white. Well, let me try that one, Real Joe Cruz. Got a piece of, what color is this paper?
It appears to be white, sir.
Yeah, okay. So I put it up next to my face.
Oh, no, you could be Native American, sir.
Really?
Possibly.
Wow. I'm not from Massachusetts. I've never been on the faculty of law school at Harvard.
You're definitely not white, sir.
Definitely not white.
No.
Huh? Okay, well, that's Selman's point. He said, Caucasians, people who mistakenly call themselves white, cannot pass the tissue test. If you put a truly white facial tissue beside their skin complexion, are we back to the port here waiting for the complexion to change? I didn't realize that complexion was so important. I got to pay more attention to some of these ads on TV. Yeah. Then it is evidence that they are beige, not white. I want to suggest that the media and others refer to them as beige nationalists. Caucasian nationalists are beige supremacists. You can see that these expressions take the punch out of their claim to superior power. The term white carries the connotation of purity, cleanliness, or something good. There is nothing good or pure about being a racist or a nationalist. The color beige puts them on a spectrum that at one end turns into brown and at the other end very light beige, not white. However, maybe albinos are white, but they are not an ethnic group and they have not band together to form a movement of racists and haters trying to suppress, oppress, or even kill others. Some people are now confused by the terms nationalist and nationalism. These terms do not mean that they support the nation. They are not patriots, even if the dictionary suggests that patriot is a synonym. In political philosophy, nationalism is more closely tied to xenophobia. Xenophobia, that's a good word. It means fear of foreigners and the separation of nations, peoples, or ethnic groups. The nationalist label is key to the Nazi Party in World War II Germany. The N in Nazi stands for nationalism. Actually, it stands for national, but close enough. Whenever members of a political group call themselves nationalists, they are sending a signal that they do not support the basic values of the U.S. Constitution of equality and justice for all. Their actions of hate and even murder are clear signals that they do not support life, liberty, and justice for all peoples. Their project is to only support and extend the basic civil rights to others whom they accept as members of their group. So to stop the haters, the racists, the bigots, I'm suggesting we use realistic terms, not self-ascribed terms, to define them for what they are: beige racists, claiming to have some delusional superiority over others. They seek to dominate other folks who are a darker hue of beige. What was the name of that song? A lighter shade of...
Gray?
A lighter shade of
brown?
White. Of white,
Is
I think.
it white or brown?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm confused.
Okay. They seek to dominate other folks who are of a darker hue or beige. Go figure, because beige is beige, regardless of the darkness of the shade of beige. Let's stop empowering them by accepting their self-ascribed label of white. When the media accepts their self-ascribed label, it lends an air of credibility to their position. Let's call them what they are: haters, racists, murderers, terrorists, anti-American, anti-constitutional, and insecure people. Well, that's James Selman, a philosophy professor at the university, talking about white nationalists. Put this back together here. Pretty interesting article. And this whole Jussie Smollett thing is just exactly as I predicted. You know, once you get started down the road of identity politics takes over everything. There's not much room for a thought process or analysis. Okay, we're coming up on the seventh inning stretch here, and I'm going to have to comment on Jack Haddock's change of uniform here right after the seventh inning stretch.
It's a seafood celebration on the Lent menu, now back at King's Restaurants. Your tasty favorites like salmon curry, orange shrimp, and whole deep-fried parrotfish will have you swimming with flavors from the sea. Our fried rice with salmon or shrimp will make ordering easy and delicious. It's a seafood celebration on the Lent menu. Available all day, every day, just for Lent, and only at King's.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Would you say that your organization would qualify as one of the best workplaces in Guam? Is your place an employer of choice? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, let's talk about how to know and what all this means.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
something that we hadn't seen before. Jack Haddock has taken the field, and a new team called the Reds. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission Reds. Okay, not the Cincinnati Reds. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission Reds. And how do I know that? Because I'm reading an article that appeared in the Post. CLTC reviews legality of red-marked leases. Yeah. So I've got this on the card. The caption in the card is Jack Haddock versus Mike Bora. The Chamorro Land Trust Commission is reviewing about 20 newly discovered, quote, red-marked leases that were signed by former Department of Land Management Director Michael Borja, who also served as the administrator for the commission. The commission also is looking into whether any other leases were signed by Bora and not brought to the board. Well, I talk about a gift that keeps on giving, huh? According to current CLTC administrator Jack Haddock, who plays first base for the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, I believe, the leases were signed but then marked with a large X through the signature portions. The commission is still determining the signing date on the leases. The commission is investigating the legality of these leases based on testimony provided as part of the public comment during the CLTC commissioners meeting on, it says Board of Commissioners. There's no Board of Commissioners at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. There is a commission. There is a Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and the members of the commission are commissioners. Anyhow, Jack, you got to work on that. During the meeting of the commissioners on not again. So going on here. I have to spend a minute with this phone here that. Okay, maybe I can get back to tall tales here. Yeah, the CLTC commissioners, during a meeting of the CLTC commissioners, aside from the newly discovered X'd out leases, the commission is also determining if there were any other leases signed by the immediate past administrative director. You want to place a bet?
Not much of a betting man, sir.
Yeah, well, I'd have to give anybody long odds to get to bet on this one. If there were any other leases signed by the immediate past administrative director, I'd say yes, no doubt. That were not brought before the Board of Commissioners for approval, Haddock said. There are 102 voided leases, and it goes into this history of the voided leases and the ratified leases, etc. However, there is currently no evidence suggesting that such leases are connected to void or voidable leases, Haddock said. Former Senator Tom Atta introduced a bill in the 34th legislature to ratify void leases. According to the Attorney General, the Commission does not have the authority to act on void leases on its own. The bill never proceeded past committee, etc. Haddock said he could not confirm the existence or status of any legislation with respect to the void leases. Well, good call, Jack. And unlike Rory Respicio, you're probably going to have to comply with whatever it is that your board wants. Maybe you could check with Rory and get some pointers how to kind of be an independent agent there at the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. But my 2 cents worth is this, Jack. That whole mess with the leases is a disaster and should not be swept under the rug. And I know that puts you in an awkward position. Jack goes on to say that would be a matter for the 35th Guam legislature. The commission last year submitted proposals to the 34th to fix issues presented by the Attorney General's opinion. The commission looks forward to the opportunity to present its findings this year. According to Senator Therese Terlahi, the new legislative head of the Committee on Land, the committee is scheduling an informal briefing for the CLTC to update the 35th Guam legislature. I have asked CLTC to present additional recommendations and outline their efforts to ensure how these errors will not happen again. Well, I think one thing has happened that might prevent that. That is that there's a new director of land management. And until my faith wavers, I have faith on the new administrator of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, Jack Hattick III, who, according to this, is now signed up for the CLTC Reds to at least try to do the right thing, given the constraints that any director has who is operating under the direction of a board. And it occurs to me that during the last break, I peeked at my Facebook comments here, and as usual, I got a good one here. I couldn't remember the name of that song I was looking for, and Bruce Johnson reminded me it's Lighter Shade of Pale. Yeah. So if we didn't have the copyright restrictions here on Facebook Live, and I had been on my toes, I would have had the real Joe Cruz key up that song so that could have played in the background while I was reading James Salmon's editorial or op-ed piece about beige supremacists. So having seen that, and then Bruce says he thinks it was by a group called Procol Harum. So having seen the value in that, I decided maybe I ought to go back and greet all of our Facebookers here today. So I start out with, it's the wrong song. Yeah.
Welcome back.
There's a difference between acknowledging those on Facebook and Meet the Press, real Joe Cruz.
I'm sorry, sir.
All right. So Rico says, hello, Judge Bob and Real Joe, the cult of personality. And Evelyn Ogden, Hafade, Mr. Bob Klitzkie. Wow, I feel so dignified. And then I've got Nate Horn. When was the last, quote, pro-pot editorial from the Post? Let me think a second. The last pro-pot editorial from the Post, was it 19?
Never?
19 forgotten, I think. Yeah, way back. And then, and then Joe Cruz. Now, this is another Joe Cruz. This is not you. Another Joe Cruz says, shame on you, Post. And then he also goes on to say, fake news, Bob. Now, I don't know if he's saying the Post is fake news or if he is addressing me with a new name. Are you going to listen to Tall Tales today and see what fake news Bob's got to say? All right. Ishmael Velez. In 1893, President Benjamin Harrison signed General Order 409 establishing the rank of Chief Petty Officer in the United States Navy effective April 1st, 1893. While the world celebrates today as April Fool's Day, I wish a happy 126th birthday to my fellow brothers, sisters, Chief Petty Officers, the backbone of the Navy. Okay, let me pick it up here. Richard V. Leon. Richard V. Leon. Let's see, I'm having a little trouble with my Facebook comments here today. I got a call. Oh, it's Jack. Okay. All right. Well, I'll come back to the Facebook comments in a minute here. and this is the Jack.
Yes, sir.
Not Jack Haddock.
The Jack.
The Jack. Hello, Jack.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. How are you?
Good.
I was listening to you reading the letter from Mr. Selman, Professor Selman.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just wondered, why is it whenever they talk about national and Nazis, they always leave out the second part, the most important part?
Socialist, Jack.
Yeah. Why is that?
I think you know the answer. I think you're posing a rhetorical question there, Jack. You know.
Well, I think it's an important item to leave out. It's it's like telling a half truth.
The National Socialist German Workers' Party. Nazi.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I don't know what Professor Selman was trying to get at, but I find it a little bit intriguing. When you line up, let's say white-skinned people, white-skinned males, it's all right to categorize them as white, but when you line up like Asians, if you mistakenly call somebody a Korean or a Japanese and they're not that, all of a sudden it's racist.
It's all very touchy, isn't it?
And even the same thing with, there's different parts of Africa, and there's different parts of Asia and dark-skinned people, and if you line them all up, and a lot of them might not be from Africa, a lot of them might be from India or from Asia, and so I don't know. I think we're playing the race card too quick nowadays.
Well, it's the left's MO, the race card, identity politics.
Yes, but I wanted to ask you a technical question regarding the Justine Smollett thing. Do we have the same procedures for grand juries and stuff like that, and true bills, returning of true bills? Are we the same, or does that differ from state to state?
Grand juries are creatures of state law, but they're all pretty much the same. And I'll give you the generic description of a grand jury. It's 24 citizens impaneled in a secret proceeding where the prosecutor brings various kinds of evidence before them to show them that a crime has been committed and who committed the crime. If at the conclusion of the presentation of the evidence, the prosecutor has drawn up a bill of indictment, and at least 12 of the grand jurors, you have to be at least 12 voting, at least 12 vote, and if the majority vote in favor of the prosecution's case, it's called a true bill. If he doesn't get the votes, it's called a no true bill. And if there's a true bill of indictment, it's taken before a judge, and then based on the indictment, criminal complaints, warrants of arrest, etc., other things can issue.
Okay, so in the case of the Chicago incident, it seems like they violated the protocols for true bills, or the understanding of what a true bill is in a grand jury.
Well, I don't think he was ever charged.
Yeah, but he went before a grand jury, right? And they returned a true bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if a grand jury returns a true bill, a criminal prosecutor has probably the greatest amount of unfettered discretion of anybody in our system, because you can't make a prosecutor prosecute something he doesn't want to prosecute, and you can't make him not prosecute something he does want to prosecute. So if the prosecutor, even in the face of a true bill, a prosecutor doesn't have to prosecute, and Kim Foxx, of course, demonstrated that. So it's not a flaw in the grand jury proceeding. If there's a flaw, It's the flaw in what the prosecutor, the district attorney for Cook County did, or as Real Joe Cruz and I would talk about, it's not what Kim Fox did. It's what she didn't do.
Okay. A kerfuffle.
Yeah.
All right. So, no, I just wanted to, because I thought, I like things in order, and I like things procedure-wise, and I don't know, it was always under my understanding that if a true bill came down, that the discretion really is out. I mean, it's a difference between alternative sentencing, right? But that's after isn't that that's the ongoing procedure, or I have no idea because I've never been a criminal.
Well, this would be a poor time to start, Jack. So after the true bill comes down, the prosecutor can go forward with his case. But if the prosecutor decides no, then there's no legal means of stopping the prosecutor from doing what Kim Fox did.
Okay, and that applies to us too, right here in
Yes.
Guam. So so if something like the lieutenant governor had done this thing, the AG could have just went by and said, hey, I'm not going to prosecute this thing.
Could have.
Okay. I just wanted to, because it sounds all messed up. And it didn't quite, I thought there was a procedural way. I mean, why go through the whole grand jury motion if you weren't going to prosecute to begin with? I thought that was the whole idea, was that you had to go through the grand jury, actually a third party outside, which is the grand jury, in which to proceed with the criminal case. But I guess, I'm wrong like I usually am.
Well, you're never wrong when you're calling tall tales, Jack.
Okay, Bob. So you have a great day. Just wanted to get that through because, I always thought that it was a procedural thing and then you had to go to the next step. I didn't know the flow chart went the other way too.
Okay, Jack. Thanks for calling. So I've got John patiently holding on line 2. Good afternoon, John.
Good afternoon, Bob. How's the day?
How's the day?
Anyways, I'm calling because I'm concerned about Senator Sabina Flores Perez ban on fishing on Guam.
Okay.
That's really going to hurt us fishermen, our families, our kids. We fish for our families, children, and relatives as a way of life and survival. She's gonna stop us from doing that. She's basically gonna stop us from our natural resources here in Guam. Fish. It's gonna force us to import fish from who knows, China or whatever, because with that ban on fishing, it's not gonna allow us to catch fish for everyone, not just for a few individuals or personal.
How many scuba fishermen do you think there are, commercial scuba fishermen on island, John?
There's about 8.
And eight scuba fishermen can have such a dramatic impact on the fish population that all scuba fishing has to be banned? Is that the idea?
That's what they say, but we fish 5 days in a week. Right now it's Lent. We fish 6 times a week, and we have fish. We bring up fish every night, and there's still a lot of fish. And they've been doing this more than our fishermen are 30 years. They've been doing fishing for 30 years. They took our preserves away. There's 5 preserves, and now they want us completely. And those preserves are supposed to do what she wants. But now she wants to completely make the whole island a preserve.
Yeah, it sounds
and then
pretty.
we can't catch fish.
Sounds pretty heavy, John.
We have fish every night. And if she stops us, this is our way of living.
I can understand your concern, John, and thanks for bringing that up. Maybe one of our folks on the international radio listening audience will be able to be of some assistance. I got to take a break right now, John. It's the home stretch.
God bless.
Thank you.
Attention homeowners, if you don't have a solar energy system on your roof from Micronesia Renewable Energy, now is the time to get one. MRE solar energy systems now come with battery storage for zero money down. This means that your home will have power even when the island power isn't available, like during power outages or during and after storms. The inconvenience of not having power for your home is a thing of the past. Don't be left in the dark. Call 632-2613 for a free consultation. MRE, the smarter choice.
We're now on the home stretch of another exciting episode of Tall Tales. That means I've got about 7 minutes to amuse and amaze before we hear the plaintive strains of Ravel's Bolero. I'm going to go back to Facebook comments, and I still haven't gotten into Mervyn Wonpat Leon Guerrero versus the United States. Maybe I'll get to that. I'm sorry, Melvin Wonpat Borja. So let's see, where did I leave off with Facebook? Richard V. Leon, port employees are all related to each other. They have no objectivity. Richard V. Leon, there were humorous stories from the port before Joanne Brown. And si mo atgidun, Ileknya Kaigidzo, see Atgidun. And then I've got Richard Leon again. Get rid of Bola Respicio. Wow. And then another Joe Cruz. What's the story with Rory looking for Port 7 glory? Another Joe Cruz is trying out his wings as a poet. What's the story with Rory for Port 7 glory wearing a Zori? And then Tedo says, Governor passed cannabis bill 4119. And then I go from there to Bruce Johnson and the lighter shade of pale. Ishmael Valiz, real Joe Cruz pulled a Britney Spears and oops, did it again. What's a Britney Spears, real Joe Cruz?
I really don't know, sir.
You don't know what it is. You just know how to do it. Huh?
I think they were referring to the time I played Meet the Press when I should have played Welcome Back.
Yeah, but how does that relate to Britney Spears?
She had a song called "Oops, I Did It Again."
Oh, okay. I'm glad I've got younger folks around here to keep me up to speed on these really important things that I seem to have overlooked. And then I've got Dave Burns. Hi, fella. Well, hi to you, Dave Burns. So that completes our welcome back of all of our Facebook friends. So I've got just a minute here. I guess I could start on Melvin Borja versus the United States. And this is an article that appeared on PNC about a week ago already. And when asked about the implications of Chuck's secession plan and its implication to Guam's own self-determination efforts, Melvin Wonpat Borja, Commission on Decolonization Executive Director, said, quote, "It's important for us to take note of this stance." That's not a very meaningful quote. But what this is all about is that the ambassador to the United States, Robert Riley, U.S. ambassador to the Federated States of Micronesia, told an assemblage of the Congress of, as you were, the Federated States Congress, that if, actually it was a group of people in Chuk, that if Chuk secedes from the FSM, and there's a lot of talk about that, because if Chuk doesn't think they're getting their fair share of the federal money, if Chuk were to secede from the Federated States of Micronesia, they would not be eligible for any of the goodies under the Compact of Free Association. And the United States would not enter into a Compact of Free Association with them. Riley said the current Compact of Free Association is with the Federated States of Micronesia and therefore does not cover a separate entity of truck. Riley added, there's no bad intent involved here or malevolent intent. It's just that the compact is with the Federated States, and in order for there to be another compact with Chuuk, there would have to be a separate compact negotiated. That, unfortunately, will not happen. So Wanpad Borja was asked to comment about this. And Wanpad Borja stressed the importance of going through the proper process. He said, we are pursuing this through the international process, not through the federal process. Wanpad Borja said, and I would argue that it's almost irrelevant what the United States wants. And I think that's quite a mouthful. It's irrelevant what the United States wants because we, whoever we is, are going through the international process. So I'm going to pick this up at the beginning of the program tomorrow because this is an important issue that the cannabis and marijuana issue kept pushing to the bottom of the card. So that's it for another exciting episode of Tall Tales. We'll see you tomorrow.